Yeah, I guess so. I know that my voice can vary a bit in amplitude, so be aware on the button. Okay, I'm gonna talk about this, how to build, where should I stand? Here. How to build a cloud and AI agnostic product. And I will explain where I'm from, what we do, who I am, and pretty much our entire stack. And I've not put that much emphasis on what we do, but more on how we do it. And then we can take more in-depth questions later on. But I work at Normain. We founded ourselves April last year, so we're pretty new. But we've had paying customers from pretty much from the start. And now we're working with everything from small consultancies to big four companies. And what we do is that we automate SharePoint and Google Drive. We remove all the tedious, repetitive work that our customers need to do from their existing workflows. So it's pretty much what the keynote speaker mentioned earlier, to use AI to remove all boring, tedious job and work. This is something that I would had shit if I didn't include this, bring magic to knowledge work from my co-founder. And this isn't the perfect analogy, but it's sort of the same thing, because Cursor, in my mind at least, they're beating GitHub Copilot on their own, in their own game. And that is a very interesting topic we can talk about more later on. But just a quick comment on that is that Microsoft isn't built with AI from the ground up as Cursor is. And that's what we do as well. We're building helpers in SharePoint and Google Drive with AI as a basic foundation. These are my parents, or at least the modern version of this is Greta Garbo and this is Borat. And the result is pretty much me. I'm an electrical engineer from the start, but I pretty much quickly switched to building applications, mainly in web and app environments. And I've done this for 15 years. I've been coding for 19 years, I think. So I think that I have about 7 companies in my history. And that means that you have to take on all the hats there are, everything from front-end, back-end, cloud maintenance, etc. And I've been a sole developer, and I've been a part of quite a large team during this journey. I love Schlager and musicals. I do not love Eurovision, but I love the Melodifestivalen in Sweden. But if there's one thing that I identify with the most, it is that I hate that I love TypeScript. How many of you can relate to that? Only the hate part. How many of you hate TypeScript? Yeah, that's 2 of you. Because I think it's a shitty language built on top of a shitty language. How many of you have used TypeScript? Yeah, that's more. How many of you kind of like it? Nice. How many of you agree with this? Yeah. Ish. I think there's so many little quirks and edge cases, so much legacy. Like, just slap a bunch of types on JavaScript and be happy with it. And then they realized, yeah, of course we have to do much more things. And then they were stuck with the legacy. But I love it. It's so much fun. And like Churchill said about democracy, it's the worst, but it's the best thing that we have. That's sort of how I view it with the TypeScript, at least when it comes to situations like we are in right now. A startup had to be a high pace, and it's really nice to have the same language in entire stack. Normain needs to be on-prem, or at least need something? Button. Because our customers are very they look at their data with very keen eyes. And so it doesn't really have to be on-prem, but that's one option. But it at least needs to be on their environment in the cloud, and so that no data leaves that space. The majority of our customers use SharePoint, which means that they have an Azure tenant. So that's our main focus, at least until a couple of months ago, where we introduced our first Google Drive customer. And this means that we have to really scale down every external thing that we can include in our platform. We cannot use pretty much any third-party services for authentication or database, etc. I really like the idea of, for instance, Terso with the distributed SQLite solutions, but that's out of the question. I really like the developer experience of Clerk, the authentication service, but that's out of the question. So we need to build a platform that's pretty much contained. And we can use specific parts of the clouds, but that needs to be part of a bigger plan. Only trusted software, we cannot use like some new cool library that just came out on NPM, even though it solves very specific issues, because it's not mature yet and it can be Maleficent software on there, etc. So it doesn't pass our audits very much. It brings questions about CI, CD, and versioning. If we have 100 of customers that we host on their platforms and their environments, then how do we actually sync those to our latest version? And maybe not all customers want to have the latest version, etc. And maybe those customers want to have them updated in batches. Scalability is another question with the same situation that I just mentioned. How do we scale it with respect to how much usage our customers use? Because we, of course, have a shared environment as well for our smaller customers. And that's more easy to us to maintain, pretty much, to have control and have monitoring on how the system actually works. But again, if we have hundreds of customers, then that's an issue. And of course, we have to handle the IT departments of our customers, which might be, it's good in most cases, but I hope I don't step on any toes here. This is something that we need to take into consideration at least. So let's break that down. How did we do this? I'm gonna go through the entire stack, but I will do it quite quickly to focus on more important part. We use React with Tanstack Router, even though that's a pretty new library. It comes from a trusted source. Tailwind, Shared CN, UI, and Vite. Backend-wise, we use Bun and Lycia. That's the same issue. It's very new, and etc. But it's from a trusted source, and passes our audits more or less. TRPC. How many of you know TRPC? I know that you're not front-end people, but it's cool to see that 2 of you have heard about it at least. Better Off. How many of you have heard about that? Nice. Prisma? Ish? Half a hand? Yeah. Postgres. And everything is containerized. So this is the infra that Nikos has helped us build. And you talked with some sort of Kubernetes expert that said that this was the good shit. Postgres and AI services, everything here is in the subnet, virtual net, and exports one port to the static web app. And this says that we have a VPN, but we'd actually changed that to using a virtual machine instead. That's pretty much it, right? Yeah, cool. The deployment part is something that I'm quite satisfied with, actually, because we use 1Password in our company. And this allows us to have one instance per customer that contains all the secrets. And that, from that instance, we can read and we can inject those variables into a Terraform variable file for the initial setup. And we can also use the same instance towards GitHub Actions. How many of you know 1Password? Yeah. Do you know that they have a CLI? Yeah, they do. They do. And it's quite nice. So we have Terraform for the initial setup, and then all changes that Terraform's put on top of that. If, for instance, if we change a bunch of secrets for the app container, or environment variables, etc., those are applied in GitHub Action. If there are more like bigger infrastructure changes, then that's probably something that we have to do manually. But luckily, that's not the case in most cases. And then we also use the password 1Password instance to deploy a new container app revision and a new static web app deployment. Pretty simple, but previous to this, we had that the secrets were pretty scattered out, and we had to define them in several stages of this. So it's nice to have one password instance to manage them all. And this, of course, we could have put them in Azure Key Vault, etc., but that might not be sustainable for the future. For instance, if we want to integrate this more in depth, and then we also want to change for one of our customers to GCP or AWS, it's nice to have a third-party instance to handle the secrets. Artificial intelligence, core part of our platform, of course. We use RAG, PG Vector. We have had some scalability questions about this, and personally, I don't think that PG Vector is the best choice for a highly scalable platform. It's very possible that we will keep using this because we don't have that much high volume. Be our choice for the future, because it also allows us to have a pretty good developer experience. For instance, if you were to use another software like Chroma or I don't know if Pinecone has some sort of open source version, etc. But that's sort of an open question still. And then, of course, you could also choose to use native stuff on the cloud provider for the RAG parts, but we'll get back to that in a bit. We use a version of contextual RAG. How many of you have heard about contextual RAG from Anthropic? You've heard it? Yeah. So how many of you have heard about RAG? Yeah? How many of you know what RAG is? Yeah, pretty much the same. But just in simple terms, RAG is when you, for the simplest case, you have a text document. You chunk that up into static parts, like 1,000 characters per chunk, and then you vectorize that into an array of numbers that you can compare to see similarities between different chunks of text. What contextual RAG is that you also put that chunk into an LLM and ask it to summarize it. And then you put that summary on top of that. That increases the output quality when you actually search for specific chunks. That's the easy explanation. And then we use VM25 to just find this is based on the number of matching words. It's more on a word level. Then we have OCR, because our customers need to send in client documents, and those can be really varying quality. We have used Azure Document Intelligence up until this point, at least. And then, of course, we have the LLMs. And also mainly we're using these models, GPT, the basic standard variants. We'll get back to this as well in a bit. But one interesting thing about these aspects is the testing. When we introduce new, for instance, models, or we introduce some alternative way of ragging stuff and chunking stuff, and maybe trying out some new OCR solution. As I mentioned, we use Azure Document Intelligence, but that of course won't work for a Google workspace. We need to be able to test the different outputs of these different solutions. And the areas that we want to test in is pretty much the same as I just mentioned. We have the retrieval part. How good does, how well does it retrieve specific chunks based on a query or question or input text. And then we have the OCR. Doesn't need to explain that more. But the end-to-end part is a bit different from the previous slide. So that's pretty much you define a bunch of client documents, you define your query, and you put that to the test with retrieval, OCR, and then we can vary the different models so that we can see which one performs the best. Different types of testing can be both manual and automatic. And what I mean with manual here is that you have a bunch of different test suites, not many of them, like maximum 10 of them per area here. And then you just run the test and you manually compare the outputs of it. That's not scalable, and that's not even accurate, but it's good enough. Because the other part is the automatic one, when you actually ask an LLM to perform a bunch of different tests and questions about how good is which one of these perform as good as did previously. That's of course very good, but it's also quite challenging in my mind, because the libraries that are out there are, I don't like the developer experience of it, and I think it's inevitable to implement it, but it's also in our case as a startup, we need to really prioritize the things that we put effort on, and again, the manual testing is good enough. Question. From everything that I've just mentioned, any ideas of what parts of our stack we're not able to develop ourselves? And I can rephrase that. What parts of our stack do we need to be provided with from the cloud provider? Any idea? Go ahead. The LLM, that's fair. Not as a startup, we should not develop an LLM, that's true. Same, yeah, Nikos? Database, that's fair. But couldn't we like host our own database in a container, for instance? Very slow, that's fair. Any other ideas? Yeah. Yeah. You mean the secret, like handling of secrets in general? Yeah, yeah. I agree with all of them, of course. And but how should I put it? What we just mentioned is not that many parts. It's the LLM, it's the OCR, it's possibly the database. Those are very manageable as a number to switch out between different cloud providers. If the entire stack were to be, if we had 10 or 20 different moving parts between cloud providers, this would probably be unfeasible. But all of the big cloud providers handle this stuff: database, LLMs, OCRs. In some cases, the LLMs are the OCRs. So to switch between cloud providers, as the topic of this discussion and workshop, it's not that hard. That's my point. It's just to spin up the resources in Terraform, switch out the endpoints, and you're pretty much done. So this headline, to code or not to code, this is sort of the where I am right now in the entire AI space, and with all these different tools that comes up, and you may be worried about your own future, etc. And also like that you have to have the latest LLMs and so on. This is my main point. Everything is beyond good enough to start building. Everything else is just optimization. So build. I'm sure that many of you have ideas of what to build. I'm not sure how many of you are entrepreneurial in minutes. But we don't have to always seek the latest models, etc. If you are in a space where you use agents, then that might probably be the case, because those need to think more, and those need to be better early on for the direction that the agent set for how we want to solve a specific problem. Because if that direction is a bit off course, then the margin of error will only grow. But in all other cases, and I would say that the majority of all services, what we have is good enough. This is the way. Go ahead. Because our customers need to host it on their own platforms. But the majority of our customers are in SharePoint, but some of them, and a growing number, are on Google. Hmm. Yeah. Could you summarize that? What should I add? That's fair. Yeah, definitely. And of course, everything is dependent on what you're doing. This is how we solve it. But my point here is that the majority of everything that you build, unless it's like deep featuring some specific USP of a cloud provider, etc., I think that the majority of stuff that the different cloud providers enables you to do is something that's not really necessary. Or I should rephrase that. You don't, for the majority of things that you can build, the majority of features within the cloud platforms are unnecessary. That's a hill that I will die on currently, at least. Nikos.
Are there any tools and technologies that you evaluated and to know to what the prioritize the departments? Like they were cool, but very hard to
Yes, but I don't know them by name right now. I had to think about that. Let me get back to you on that one. Yeah. Mm? Say that again. Yeah. So the question is, what can go wrong in this setup, and what I'm most worried about. I would be very worried if we were to use some, or had to use some specific service in a cloud provider that I was unsure of, that it wasn't implemented in the other services. OCR is touching on that, but it's still, I mean, that also has to do with the output quality. But since we have slimmed this so much down to like standard stuff, all cloud providers have databases and LLMs and OCRs. This is a very balanced approach. But it also, by definition of what we want to solve, it is a bit scattered. We are using multiple providers, and that brings a sort of risk in itself. What if they change some API? What if they what if Terraform does not implement this specific thing correctly right now? But it's also solvable because you can configure it manually. So I want to give you a good answer to that, like a nuanced one, but it is also balanced. Yeah. And it's not wrong to use, if you're like some deep down in Azure, as most of you are, of course, it's I would say that it's a good thing to use what they provide you with. But if this is something that's on your roadmap, then I would not touch that with gloves, because I'm not sure if the other providers can give me that functionality. Be careful about the amount of tools you outsource. Yeah, that's pretty much what I just said. Choose with care. I'm gonna stop there and open up for more questions if there are any.
So just a couple of reflections. So the solution that you build and the tooling that you use, and as you say, it can be cloud agnostic. From a startup perspective, I guess, you know, there's so many unknowns in the beginning, but everything changes so fast, like in real time at the moment. And price is one of those factors. You use LLM. I
Yeah.
imagine like your startup calculation in the early days, and now a year later, must be way different because of the price difference of LLMs.
Yeah,
So it's better today than it was a year ago,
indeed.
cost-wise.
A comment on that is that this actually is not a cost for us. It's a cost for our customers. And they're still willing to pay, and they're of course happy that we lower the prices, like for their daily usage. But what's most interesting about that is that all changes of all stacks changes with the use of LLMs, even UX design and UI design, because it presents us with entire new design elements that we can use. Previously, we had like a drop down on, yeah, these are the things that you can choose. Now we can generate all of those items in that drop down, and we can even say that just enter a word or 2 words that what you want to do right now, and then we can outline the entire like user path that they might want to perform in our platform and application. Those things are very much enabled by lowering the prices of the LLMs. That's something that I thought about when you. Nikos.
You have just to build, to start building, and there is like an ocean
there's two different approaches of what you asking for. The first one is the business one, and the second part is tech one. So the business part is the sky is open. You can do pretty much anything, but and that might be overwhelming. So I'm not sure if that was actually even a part of what you were asking for. But my answer to that, at least, is that start small, always. And the technical part, try it out. You probably have some, for instance, if we take models, you have some models in your mind, probably. And those that we use are probably those ones. This is what I'm meaning here, is that the things that you probably already know is probably good enough. Try it out. If it's not good enough, try another. Like, there aren't just that many models so far. We have the GPT-4 suite, which is very stable ones. We have the Anthropic Claudes 3.5 is on par with 4.0, but when we also have 3.7, that also introduces thinking, as well as the O3 models from OpenAI. And then we have, of course, DeepSeek, but we should not open that discussion right now. My main point is try, but base it on what you're trying to solve. In our case, we're trying to extract the expertise from our customers, help them to create a good prompt, and then do their work automatically. That's our starting point. Try if 4.0 is good enough for that. If not, move on. So the question is how to become confident in the tech choices, more or less. Yeah. So we have an amazing team, both from the business part and from the tech part, and we have very open discussion of what does our customer needs. That's my main inspiration of stuff. I view all of the tech choices as tools to means to an end, sort of. It's not that the tech solution it's not anything in itself. Everything has to do with the end user. So just gather as much insights as possible and discussions from those part of the company. Read up on different new tools that comes to mind. I'm holding developer experience and how easy it is to actually work in day to day with the tool. And from there, it sort of just merges pretty well together. But I would lie if I would not say that half a year ago I felt a bit lost. There's so many tools to try out, and what if I do the wrong choice now, etc. But it's just a matter of time, and just a matter of asking questions, like in these situations, and with the peers that we're in right now. But to be honest, pretty much with OpenAI and ChatGPT and its competitors, just reason with it. Is this a good choice? What can the pros and cons be of this choice, etc. It's not always correct, but you have responsibility to validate it. Yeah.
I'm just curious, like how your app looks like. Do you have any demo?
Yeah, we had one quick slide in the beginning. I don't think that time-wise that I should actually go into demo mode right now. But it's just a quick thing here. This is actually the alpha version of this. But you have, this is a free text, what you want the Excel to do and the automation to do. Here you have the different data sources and the template file, etc. You click on a run button up here, and then it starts filling in Excel. So this is the part that our customers do. They extract their expertise into a prompt. We help them automatically and manually. Very brief demo, but I think that you get the shallow point. Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. Hmm? No, it's the latter part. Sorry, not the scientific part, but it's more trying it. It's very startup way of doing things, but gather as clear data as you possibly can to, yeah, we have this business cases, we have this input, and we want this output as much as possible to just get a understanding of what we want to do and try it out. One more question. Yeah. 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 That's interesting question. I will try to answer it briefly. We do not use CMP or anything from Anthropic. We use Cursor very intensely. I just added, just a couple of days ago, I allowed Cursor to create an ESLint plugin for me, and I just entered it into YOLO mode. I said the exact requirements that I wanted, clicked enter, it iterated a bit on it for 10 minutes and just worked. So I hate writing ESLint plugins, and it was just a pleasure to work with that. Cursor also implemented their own rules, which is some sort of like agentic version of generators to generate code in your stack, and that's very powerful. I still feel that we're today in a mode that we need the developers to have full control of everything, and the AI is a tool. We'll see where we end up in the future. One more question. Yeah. That's a very keen observing. Are helping you with many of those stuff. For instance, I'm maybe out on deep water here, but I know that I'm fairly certain that Azure have some sort of GRAG solution. It might be the case that we want to use that in the future, and then we can do a survey. Does the major cloud providers have options for these so that we can rely on, that way they will remain? Then I'm open to adding another resource per cloud provider to integrate it. But that's a con of our approach, that we need to build everything ourselves if we want to use these advanced techniques. So that might be something that I'm open to open up to. We have time. Yeah.
Okay, some questions for me.
We have a lunch later on as well.
Yeah, we also have a lunch, and you're staying, I guess, so hope you.
Exactly.
Just wanted to add something to your question there. How do you know that your tech stack is the one that you want to go with? I guess in your approach, you needed to start somewhere. You got something viable that you can run with, and in all the developments that I've seen, and especially with enterprises, you have to make that you will always be waiting without having the right couple of people as well.
Yeah.
That's my learning from working
No,
with enterprises.
basically I agree completely with you. Basically our system should be much flexible. Like when we take something that's starting, and if it will not work, so we should be able to replace a particular piece of thing from the other software. For example, we are using an empty database, whatever database we are using as a vendor. In the future, it is not scalable, so at least we should be able to basically replace the database instead of rewriting everything. So I think that should be initial. We should take it as a approach.
I think it's not that easy. Like planning everything. It's not so simple.
So it's not simple, but at least we should keep in mind when we are designing
Yeah,
something.
Yeah.
I would like modular design and architecture, but it's not possible because clouds are always trying to hold together.
I like the term "it's simple but not easy."
That's true. That's good. Yeah.
But from your presentation here, it sounds like just go out and do a startup, get your hands warm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kalle.
Thank you.
is going to be interesting. Let's see if I can put it in my pocket. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Azure Saturday event, this time with focus on Global AI Bootcamp. You might know me from before as one of the Azure Skåne coordinators. I also have another job. I have a day job. I work as a Microsoft Cloud Solution Architect. I come with 20 plus years of work experience. I started my career in 2003 as a .NET developer. And over the years, I've worked my way up to technical lead, technical solution architect role. And these days, I work as a Microsoft Cloud Solution Architect with focus on Microsoft Azure, Microsoft 365, and Power Platform. So that's my focus area. And today in this session, we're going to look at a couple of Azure AI use cases and where it has come handy in solving, customers' problems and challenges. So as I was listening to a lot of your questions at the end of the previous session, I realized that I might be able to have some answers brought to you during my talk. So what I have on the screen is a collection of some sample AI tools and functionalities within Microsoft AI landscape that can be used for solving different AI challenges. You see Azure AI Services, which are continuously evolving. You have heard a lot about agents and autonomous agents. You've heard a lot about copilots. And we have Copilot with a capital C and Copilot with a small c. And what is the difference here? You might have heard of SharePoint agents. If you're working with Power Platform, you might have heard of AI Builder within Power Platform. So there are a lot of tools. So which one should I use? So instead of asking that question, the catch here is to understand the individual functionalities of each and every tool in this Pandora box, and then look at your own use case. The catch here is that these tools are not competing with each other. They are teammates. They're supposed to complement each other. Some are better at certain use cases. Some are cheaper for some other use cases. So you need to get some, foundational understanding of the capabilities behind this tool set before you can make an informed decision around your particular use case. I have a couple of sample common use cases when it comes to generative AI. Many of you might be already dealing with these challenges or might be working on these cases. The top most famous resolution to all problems is enhanced productivity. So a lot of people are suffering from, slowness, manual efforts involved, and, they want to increase productivity. That's where the challenge is. And of course, we also have manual processes that can be automated to save a lot of time and cost in the end. You can use AI for improving your customer experience. We'll get into some samples as we go forward. And then, of course, you can become creative with AI, with generating more content, right? Drafting, you're already using Copilot probably for, generating your meeting notes, or if you want to draft an article, you can get help from ChatGPT. A lot of you are using AI one way or another. At least you've started. One very common use case that is probably the simplest one of all is to build a conversational chatbot. That's how you've been using ChatGPT, right? Using OpenAI or Azure OpenAI regardless. But when you work with ChatGPT, you raise a question and you get a general answer. But the answers are not specific to your context, right? If you ask about your medical information, ChatGPT will not have that information. Or within your workspace, if you ask about a specific organizational process, ChatGPT will not be able to answer that. So in order to solve that gap and basically bring AI into context, you need to ground your AI services, basically, in your organizational content. That means Azure OpenAI should be grounded in your organizational backend data layers. It could be Azure Storage, it could be SharePoint libraries, it could be Confluence, whatsoever. And then the data that is derived from the backend data layer is presented to you via Azure OpenAI in human language. I have a screenshot of Microsoft documentation when it comes to high-level design of a chatbot. So if you pay attention here, you have a chat application, which is the front end. On the other end, you have your organizational content. It could be Office documents stored in a SharePoint library or on another platform. If that content is present in Azure Storage as well, then you can have Azure AI Search indexing your content, vectorizing it. You can have vector search or keyword search or a hybrid, both are possible. And once your content is indexed, and this indexing process can run periodically, so you can continue adding more and more content over time, and your content will be included in the search scope. Once you have your content indexed, then you can have Azure OpenAI running search queries behind the scenes and then returning the response to your question. It's basically a search functionality that is being sugar-coated with human language, right? So approximately a year ago, my team delivered a solution to one client here in Sweden, where we delivered a chat with your data solution, deriving responses from their own organizational documentation. They had a knowledge base in Confluence, and they wanted to facilitate, the search functionality over Confluence using AI. So for the front-end layer, it was the Azure Bot SDK that was used to build the front end of the application. And then, of course, in the back end, we had the Confluence articles extracted by a job and stored in Azure Storage. And we had Azure AI Search indexing the content. And then, of course, we had the Azure OpenAI layer on top to perform the search queries, receiving the prompts and handling them as search queries behind the scenes and returning the responses in human language. So it's a very simple mainstream use case. Have you tried chat with your data solutions in your workspace? Very nice. So people are familiar with it. So one of the concerns about basically putting your organizational data on Azure and making it available via OpenAI has always been the security aspect. This question pops up: what will happen to my data? Is my data available to other organizations as well? Are Microsoft LLMs learning from my material? Are they basically using my knowledge base to improve their own knowledge or responses. The question is no. Your organization owns your data. Your OpenAI instances that you create on Azure belong to your organization. They are sandboxed and they are not shared across different clients and different organizations. And of course, talking about chatbots, Copilot is actually a bot or a virtual assistant, right? We have Copilot with capital C, which is the Microsoft 365 Copilot tool, and we have Copilot with small c, small letter, and those are basically your extended versions or your organizational bots that you create, for example, via Copilot Studio. Yeah. The topic of agentification has popped up during the past year. And now we're not just talking about that you can have multiple threads running in the back end, right? You can have complex logic refactored and splitted and handled by different functions in the back end. Different threads can run simultaneously to handle the process basically all the way. It's the same story here with the agents. Agents are introduced to actually level up the kind of business challenges we are trying to solve here. It's not just one assistant that is doing the job. That assistant is the entry point to multiple threads behind the scenes. There are different agents behind the scenes focusing on solving smaller sub-processes or sub-challenges. And then, of course, these agents can be autonomous. That means they could be triggered either with human involvement or on their own as the circumstances rise. And you can have an orchestrator involved as well to manage the sequence or simultaneous involvement of different agents. And the agents can also trigger each other. So if we look at the tool set that we have available just for building AI assistants, we're talking about Microsoft 365 Copilot, we're talking about Copilot Studio, and we're talking about Azure AI Foundry. Which one should I use for my purpose, for my use case? How do I decide? Why? Because we are biased. We are Azure Skåne people, we are biased. We go with Azure. Fabric.
Yeah, the other one.
So it's a maze, you know. I read somewhere that, you know, the AI toolset field has become so crowded, it's become like a jungle that Indiana Jones might lose his way through. It's quite confusing at first, but once you spend a little time looking into certain functionalities and use cases, and also looking at Microsoft documentation, your penny drops. When it comes to building AI assistant, this is a screenshot from Microsoft. By the way, it's not my material. There is a range of tool set that you can use for different kind of developers and different purposes. So if you're an information worker, not a professional IT person, and you're inside the organization and you're struggling with tedious manual work, and you want to bring in some automation into your work, go low code. You use Copilot Studio Agent Builder, right? That's the whole idea or agenda behind using low-code platforms like Power Platform. We want to speed up this digitalization, right, inside the organizations. And how many developers should we onboard to automate the processes? Why not get help from the information workers that actually know how to work with Office applications. They can easily take a small leap into Copilot Studio, use low code, and build their own AI agents. If you are somewhere in the middle, you're not a professional developer, coder, but you have your hands already in local platforms like Power Platform as an app maker, as a flow maker, then you can use Copilot Studio as well. But if you are a professional developer and you're dealing with more complex challenges that would require a lot of customizations, a lot of custom coding, then of course you can go with Azure AI Foundry, Bot Framework. There are so many SDKs, so many platforms for front-end and back-end development. And of course you can do a hybrid. So as you see, again, another Microsoft slide. We have a range of severity of the challenge. You can use OCR, you can use, OpenAI and low code. But as we go towards right-hand side, the complexity of the challenge increases. So you may not be able to just handle the challenge with one single assistant. We go towards more autonomous agent setup. Talking about other conversational AI scenarios, we're talking about automation of business processes as well. This is not conversational, actually. This is about automating, document processing. If documents need to be approved, they need to be sent forward. That kind of resolutions. Another use case that we are currently working on in my team is to build a Q&A bot, meaning we are trying to actually have some machine learning involved here to train on our technical documentation as well as the most common questions that we have been receiving from the customers. And then we are building our own custom model, which is used for basically deriving generative answers to different questions. So on the one side, you have the content, the technical content, and on the other side, you have the questions coming in. And this thing is not working. Yes, of course. Yeah, you start with an existing LLM, and then you make it customized. You custom train it, on your data. I have more information on that going forward. And then, of course, another use case is the CRM scenarios. For example, if you are receiving a lot of calls from your customers. Can someone help me with this? Welcome. Come on in. If you're into Azure, you're in the right place. All right. So back to the CRM scenario. For example, if you are receiving a lot of customer calls, and obviously the customer calls are voice messages. So you can actually use Azure AI speech-to-text service to get your customer calls documented in text format, and then you can have a knowledge base of basically your customer calls that could be used for reporting purpose later on. If you want to know how many, let's say, negative or complaining calls we had, you can derive insightful KPIs once you have your data in text format. You can, of course, use other cognitive services or Azure AI services for exploration, visualization of trends, using different front ends platforms, and you can also, in the end, leverage this data for making, game-changing decisions when it comes to your customer satisfaction, depending on where you are right now. Talking of AI assistants and Copilot, there is a Copilot chat and agent starter kit that you can look into. There's a lot of training coming in from Microsoft team. There is no excuse, really, to miss out on this opportunity. So you can basically dip your hands into it and get something AI-based up and running. I'm going to move on to the next use case or set of use cases that I have to present today. And they all have to do with Vision AI Services. Have you tried out Azure AI Vision Studio? Very nice. I mean, when it comes to chatbots, you can go to AI Foundry and use the chat playground, right? You have tried that out. That's the simplest step. But there is also an Azure AI Vision Studio that you can try out. And I don't know if you knew about this. Actually, there are a set of Azure AI Vision services that are ready-made. You can start using them. And if the time allows, maybe we take a look at it at the end of the presentation. Basically, when it comes to image analysis, it's one thing to capture the image and identify the objects that are inside the image. That is the image analysis object detection type of AI service. You also have face recognition, facial recognition, where you can, identify faces, people's faces, and even extract their emotions on the faces. And there is also some limited functionality when it comes to OCR to extract text from images. So if there is something written on an image, that could be extracted and brought into your backend data layer and processed. Have you heard of multimodal LLMs? What are multimodal LLMs? A single trick pony. They have multiple skills, multiple AI skills. So when I talk about vision services, I'm talking about their superpowers when it comes to analyzing images. But what about text analysis? There is another service called Document Intelligence Service for analyzing documents, more complex structured and unstructured documents. That is specialized, AI service for text analysis. Then we have Vision AI Services specialized on image analysis. But there are multimodal LLMs that can do both. So they can analyze images and text. And some of them can do it at a very, very decent level. Here are a few examples of some multimodal LLMs that are available right now in the market, and you see OpenAI, GPT 4o, and 4o Mini stand on the top. We, of course, have Microsoft, Azure AI Services, basically 3.5 Vision. You get GPT 4.0 and 4.0 Mini using Azure OpenAI Service as well. And then, of course, there is a Meta LLM too. And you can see you have the possibility to try these out either via Azure AI Studio or Azure AI Vision Studio, Azure AI Document Intelligence Studio, which is another studio you may not be aware of. So you have multiple playgrounds where you can try these out. And of course, for your solutions, you might want to, overuse these services. You want to, go beyond your Azure credit limits. And in that scenario, I really recommend going to GitHub Codespace, because these models are also available on GitHub Codespace, and you can use them for free. Did you know that? Who said yes? Oh, cool. Somebody knew it. That's great. All right. So you can use Azure AI Vision Services or GPT 4.0 OpenAI service for image analysis. And this is a snippet from Python code from Pamela Fox. Actually, I don't own this. This is something I borrowed from Pamela. She does a lot of intensive AI educational presentations and courses, and I highly recommend that you subscribe to her channel, and it's quite compelling to see her demos. But if you want to feed in an image, let's say via code, outside of the playground, I want to build an application, and I would like to have images uploaded by my end users, and I want my image to be analyzed. So I get some response about the objects that are detected on this image. You can make a request to Azure OpenAI service, and you can provide the path to your image, the image URL that could be stored in Azure Storage. And then, the Azure OpenAI service starts analyzing it. You can specify which model to be used also for analysis as well. But at some points, you may not have your image already present. Somewhere you don't have a URL path to the image. Another way to have the image fed to your OpenAI service is to actually convert it to binary 64 format and then feed it as a B64 stream. People who have experience working with larger images might be familiar with this format. The sample code that we looked at was using OpenAI for image analysis, but as I mentioned, there are vision APIs that could be used. Azure Vision AI can be used as well. What is the use case for vision analysis or image analysis? Oh, really? Accessibility. Okay, so it could be that you have a problem reading a busy page and image analysis. Let's say a food menu. The fonts are too small. You can actually take a screenshot of the menu, and then you get the options returned, the food options. So if you have challenges with your eyesight. Also, it's quite common to use vision or image analysis for, let's say, customer evaluation or customer claim evaluation as a first pass. For example, for insurance companies, if they upload an image with a destroyed car and say, oh, this happened to my car because of a hailstorm, and I'm claiming some insurance money. So the image analysis can be used there to verify if it's relevant or not. What kind of hailstorm, smashed the car that hard or that bad. So as a first level pass, or there is a use case that I would like to bring forward soon, which is what we worked with in my team. But before I move away from this slide, there is a catch here. There are use cases you should not use image analysis for. And it's emphasized on And can you guess which use cases? Exactly. For medical inspection, you should not rely on image analysis. It's still early days. It hallucinates a lot. It's not reliable. I'm going to skip over, or maybe I can just briefly talk about this one. Sometimes you have documents, so it's not just one page. It's a multi-page document that you would like to have analyzed. There could be images inside this document that you can extract and feed to your image analysis service, or you could actually convert this whole document into an image and feed it to vision services. Is it good to use AI vision services for analyzing documents? No, probably document intelligence service is a more specialized service for handling documentation. I'm going to skip this one, and I'm going to skip this one as well. Moving on to the case study where I and my team have been involved in. So this is the problem statement here. We have a client from manufacturing industry, and they produce, manufacturing products that are marketed around the world, and they are facing this challenge with unauthentic copies of their products being sold in different markets around the world, basically fake products. And they wanted to, or what they were asking for was to leverage AI to receive pictures of the packaging of the product, as well as, product labels of the products, and then verify based on the pictures whether this product is an authentic factory-made product from their side or not. So I have a little screenshot, which is from a, product label up there. I cannot show you more pictures. So what we did was that we set up a portal on Power Pages using Power Platform for basically customers to upload their pictures. And then, of course, behind the scenes, these images were stored in Azure Storage, and then we had the dilemma of which Azure AI service should be used for analyzing these images, right? So we started with Azure AI Custom Vision. Well, that's the thing, it's broken. It's been like that the entire time. Maybe I should wear a hat. Just say it. Anyways, so we were facing this dilemma of which Azure AI Vision service should be used for this use case, or which Azure AI service should be used. So we started with Azure AI Vision service, super basic. Obviously, it doesn't make sense because it was not trained on our product label data. So we looked into customizing this service, basically building our own model and training it on our own data. That would mean that we would have to, involve machine learning and also start labeling the authentic pictures. And you need a good amount of, labels in order for this to be accurate. The minimum is 50. You need at least 50, but 50 is nothing, The level of accuracy is not much. So you need, the more, let's say sample data you have on which your custom model trains, the more accurate it becomes. Well, I have Microsoft in the room, but according to Microsoft documentation, minimum is 50. Good enough, I will let Michael, if you know about, or Ali. Have you looked at it?
I mean, is it 100,000? I have no
1500 is gives me 70% of accuracy.
Yeah.
So we need like 100.
Yeah, you need a good amount, yes.
Just quickly to add, Goran, one of the other person here in the group, he has a synthetic AI startup which is based on images that are more 3D generated, because that's the problem. If you want to have 2,000 of those pictures and you have to take it on each one of them, so it could be shadowy, it could be different.
Yeah, it could be
colors.
folded,
But
one
in
of the
that
challenges.
service, you just model it and then you run it through different areas and it rotates and it takes pictures and you use that material to train. And then you get really high accuracy.
Exactly. And when you're actually, is there a question? You could use standard databases. You need to basically upload everything in Azure storage. And then you basically have a container which contains your images. And then you start labeling. Labeling should be approved also, so there is one approval stage. And then you start training your model. And the training can take some time also, depending on the volume of your data. So there is a training budget also that you need to consider. And it starts with 1 hour of training and it goes on to, depending on your budget. So you got to give it time. It could take some days to train. But what we learned in this process, and this was a pre-study phase. As I said, we were facing the dilemma of which image analysis option should we go for, the million-dollar question from today's event. Everyone is wondering which tool to use or which service to use. So obviously, Azure AI Vision Services sound relevant, so we started a discovery phase. And we learned that the OCR functionality for detecting text from images is quite basic, even when you train your Azure AI Vision Service. You can use it for object detection. Logo, for example, can be here. And also for content moderation, this service is good to mention. This service could be used for content moderation if the content is,
Also one extra thing I want to add is the image analysis is good at putting the XY coordinates and where the object is, whereas the GPT-4o, if you use it won't be able to tell you, okay, where is the object placed.
the location.
Yeah, the location, so this is one of the many different.
Very good point. Thank you, Ali. So the next scenario that we looked at was the document intelligence service. And as mentioned earlier, the Azure AI Document Intelligence Service is quite capable of handling larger documents. The content on the documents, inside the document could be structured, like, tables could be there, different fonts. So it is quite capable of handling complex documentation. For our case, we needed something that would handle both images and text, OCR, basically. We were not dealing with documents in this case. And then the third option we looked at was Azure OpenAI GPT-4. And this service is a multimodal service. That means it can handle both images and text to a good advanced level, to a decent level that we were satisfied with. It can also do the image analysis. It can understand the image also. That means it can describe the image. And we talked about conversational assistance, which was the first use case for this session. So we brought together a little matrix. This is not the full matrix that I'm presenting. The outcome of our pre-study is a larger matrix, but relevant to this session and the level of this session, we have a matrix which represents our learnings in this pre-study. So when it comes to content analysis, Azure AI Custom Vision can handle images, videos, and some basic OCR. Azure OpenAI, GPT-4o and 4o mini can handle both documents and images, and also Azure AI Document Intelligence can do both as well. When it comes to OCR functionality, obviously Azure AI Document Intelligence and OpenAI 4o, GPT-4o are more advanced than the Azure AI Vision services when it comes to image analysis. When it comes to natural language support, it's actually Azure OpenAI service. I have to move this. Sorry about that. And then we have the cost element. Do you know which one was the cheapest? It was GPT Mini, exactly. So let's go to the cost slide. So we did a little bit of calculation. And for documenting, I mean, we basically stopped considering Azure AI Vision services. We started putting focus on document intelligence and GPT 4.0. For document intelligence service, there is a pay-as-you-go model for payment, and there is also the possibility to commit to some sort of a plan. So you commit to using, for example, document intelligence for analyzing up to 500,000 pages each month, and then you get a discounted rate if you compare. So for 13,000 pages, the estimation is this amount in crowns per page. But if you commit to actually consuming this service for up to 500,000 pages per month, then you get a decent discount here, as you can see. Now let's look at GPT-4. And we have both GPT 4.0 and GPT 4o mini. As you can see, this is of course based on our test in January, February this year. Things are changing with pricing and currency rate and everything. But as you can see, you can compare on both sides the difference between document intelligence and GPT-4o, and also between GPT-4o and GPT-4o mini. You can see there is an interestingly huge difference.
But the one is token, not the one is page.
Yes, that's true. That's true. But look at the number of tokens. We're talking about 1 million tokens for 4o and 4o mini. So 1 million tokens is what we put our comparison basis on. Yeah, I understand. But 1 million token is something around, I don't know how many pages actually. I have to look back and see. Good question, actually. 1,000 pages. So you can compare, we should actually, that is the image analysis AI service that we are using today, building this application. And with that said, I'm going to wrap up and open it up for questions. If any question is left for me to be answered, after all. I know it's almost lunchtime. Okay. Okay, so I'll be around. If you're hungry, you can get going for lunch. Otherwise, we can take questions. I'll be around. Let's catch up. I'm very interested in hearing about your use cases. What have you been trying out in AI domain, and did any of these use cases that we discussed today resonate with the challenges you're facing today? Did it give you value, or did it spark any idea about how to go forward solving your